Hello, my name is Stephen Quick. I'm the group leader of Group 9, and my team consists of 5 members, which are Chang Tang Sing, Shi Jia Jun, IVANNA Lin Yi Ying, Liu Zheng Hong. So the topic that we're going to discuss and present is inflation. Based on our articles that we have gathered, the first presenter will be Chu Xiaojing on the introduction of inflation.
Inflation is the long-term increase in price of a service or goods due to the devaluation of a currency. The problem of high inflation usually arises when there is an unexpected spike. If incomes do not rise while inflation is rising, purchasing power for everyone will effectively decline, lead to a stagnation or slowdown in the economy. In other words, inflation is essentially the value of the dollar in terms of the purchases at a point in time. The idea behind the inflation being a positive force for the economy is that if interest rates are well controlled, they can boost the economic growth without devaluing the currency to the point where it is almost worthless. Next, we talk about the demand pull inflation. It occurs when aggregate demand for goods and services in an economy increases faster than the economic capacity to produce. A potential shock to aggregate demand could come from a central bank rapidly increasing the money supply. However, over the time, this can lead to the high inflation. If the country debt increases, the country have two options: by raising the taxes or print more money to pay off the debt. So when the taxes are increases, businesses respond by increasing the prices of their goods and service, will automatically lead to increased inflation. Next, the exchange rate also will lead to the inflation whereby a country increases the exposure to the foreign market prices. Its inflation will become worse, and the cost push effect, which is an economic theory that attempts to explain what drives the prices of consumer goods and services. This theory stated that firms face with increased input costs such as raw material, maintain profitability by passing on this increased production costs to the consumer in the form of higher prices. As we know that inflation is defined as the process of continuously rising prices and declining purchasing power of value or money. So if the goal is to maintain the stable purchasing power, the inflation experienced by the consumer in their daily cost of living is a logical measure of a price stability obligation. The consumer price index is to measure the average change in the basket of consumer goods and services over time and is the most common indicator for inflation. This approach is a cost index of goods designed to monitor the purchasing power or expenditure required to purchase a basket of a given quality to capture changes in pure price rather than changes in the product quality. So the cost of living index is the specific cost of the commodity index. It measures the amount of a consumer must spend to achieve a certain level of utility or standard of living over the time. Both approaches derive from the changes in the prices of goods and services, but the full cost of living index goes beyond the consumer fixed basket to account for changes in the governmental or the environmental factors that affect the consumer well-being. So the cost of living indexes is always based on the assumptions, for instance, household utility or estimated or projections which are non-market consumer goods such as public health, education, public goods in general, and these are very difficult to measure. Next, the information about the consumption pattern is also not available frequently enough for the weighting to reflect the actual utility levels. Last, the inflation can affect all aspects of the economy, including the cost of living, business costs, borrowings, mortgages, corporate, and the government bond yield. Inflation can be positive or negative for the economic recovery. Higher prices for energy, food, raw materials, and other goods and services affect the economy as a whole. A slight rise in inflation could affect business investment and increase firm production costs. But if the inflation is brought under control, it could act as a healthy stimulus to the economy. So the high inflation can also negatively affect the exchange rates, ultimately leading to a collapse in export. So next, I will pass to Tang to talk about the factor of inflation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm CHEANG. Today, I want to explain about the factor of inflation. Two primary of factor in inflation is demand and cost. On the demand side, the immoderations of consumption, investment, and currency supply cause the increasing price. And on the cost side, the company will increase the price to earn more benefit. So these two factors will affect each other. The rise of demand will cause the rise of cost. The rise of cost will make the price increase and the inflation also increase. And the second factor is devaluations. In the article shown, the US economy is facing inflation now, and this situation is affected the performance of other currency, including Malaysia ringgit. While the local currency, a change of the US dollar will make the food price increase and the inflation also increase. And the third factor is the rising wage. The minimum salary will cause inflation because the rate of salary, minimum salary, is equivalent with the rate of while the salary is linking with production line, production cost, and the price will increase the price, and the inflation also increase. And the last factor is war between Russia and Ukraine. This is because Russia and Ukraine is the country mainly export wheat and corn. So influence on food price, the inflation also increase. This all is the factor of inflation.
Hello everyone, I am ZHEN from Group 9. Our topic is inflation. I am now going to share the effect of inflation based on my finding and opinion. The first effect caused by inflation that I am going to share is effect on Malaysian daily needs. When we talk about inflation, for most people, the first thing that comes to mind is price rising. This situation still nowadays in Malaysia. Based on our group findings, low-income families in Malaysia have to lower their quality of life, such as eating instant noodle to satisfy hunger. So, here come the second effects. When people cannot get enough nutrition, people get weak and get sick. This is one of the situation inflation that directly affect people healthy and safety. Inflation can affect people's safety also. According to World Population Review, Malaysia get ranked number 4 in crimes rate in 2022. People chose to be illegal when they are faced with poor life. The third effect will be effect on education. High inflation raised the cost of students' necessities such as housing, food, and transportation, and will push up tuition costs. That's all for me. Thank you for listening.
Next, we'll talk about solutions and suggestions on how to counter inflation. Contractionary monetary policies are one of the more credible approaches to inflation, in which the central bank of a country increases the interest rates or reduces money supply in the economy to decrease spendings. The government also plays a critical role in fighting inflation. It can intervene by imposing price controls on goods and services to maintain price stability. It can also allocate subsidies for the lower income class to aid them financially on basic necessities. During inflationary periods, business owners can adjust costs and margins to maintain prices and retain customer loyalty. They can also adapt pricing strategies such as recalibrating and cleaning up the product portfolio repositioning the brand, or replacing the price model. On the other hand, consumers are encouraged to keep a budget accordingly to increase financial awareness and reduce unnecessary purchases. This can also reduce the flow of money in the economy, which can decrease the rate of inflation. Consumers can also find alternatives in their daily choices, such as brands of products in their daily diet, to increase cost efficiency to cope with inflation.
The conclusion of this presentation is that inflation is unavoidable. This is because inflation is a natural consequence of the economic system. So the cost of anything in the economy are inherently volatile due to a large number of variables, and it will only be impossible to micromanage prices given the scale and complexity of our economy. Even so, low inflation is conventionally believed to create a virtuous cycle of stimulated economic growth as it encourages investments and spending. Moreover, sufficient inflationary pressures reduce the risk of deflation, which is much more destructive and harder to recover from. Hence, governments need to work toward devising innovative and effective measures to keep our inflation low and manageable. So, not only focus on the monetary aspects, but also on diverse factors such as social and political matters to ensure sustainable economy.
So the question is, why can't the government just print more money? As I mentioned in the introduction, when the country is facing inflation, then the country have more the national country debts, then there are two options for the country, which is increase the tax or print more money. But print more money, it seems like a simple solution to the problem of the inflation by just giving people more money to make up for the buying power. But this is not how the economy works, because like printing more money tends to increase the inflation because there is too much demand through the new cash for an unchanged amount of goods. So in other words, it means increasing of the number of bills and coins in the circulation would only devalue the dollar. So, and the government isn't in charge of the printing money. It's in charge by our central bank. It operates independently from the government in order to safeguard monetary policy from the political pressure. Okay, thank you.
The next Q&A question is, why US dollar will affect all country currencies?
The reason why US dollars affect other countries' currency is because in most cases, a lot of countries does international trade, and when a country does trading, you have to ensure that the country's currency is stable, and the way to remain stable all the time is by pegging. Pegging is a way to get your country's currency tied to another country's currency. So in most cases, most countries are tied to the US currencies, and when the dollar value changes, it affects the total volume of the global trade, and subsequently most countries that got associated or pegged with US dollars will be affected as well.
For our Q&A session, here I'll answer a question. I have received a question asking how inflation is measured in Malaysia. My answer is the inflation rate, as measured by the change in the consumer price index, as we call CPI. It reflects the average rate of increase in the price of a basket of goods and services. That's all for me. Thank you.
Who can benefit from inflation? Debtors can pay lenders back with money worth less than when it was originally borrowed during unexpected increases in the rate of inflation, which benefits borrowers. Assets owners are also beneficiaries, as rising inflation tends to raise the value of all commodities, including property, lumber, and even things like artworks and collectibles.